Battle of Antietam began on September 17, 1862. It took place in Maryland near a town named Sharpsburg. The battle was named after the Antietam Creek, which was the body of water nearest to the battle. It was the single bloodiest day of the Civil War. During the battle, the two sides fought in many different places, such as the cornfield and Bloody Lane. They also fought at a bridge named Burnside's Bridge, named after Union General Ambrose Burnside. During this part of the battle, a few handfuls of rebels, Confederates, held off the entire Union Army by preventing them from crossing the bridge. Eventually, however, the Union broke through. During the Battle of Antietam, both sides suffered many casualties and losses. On the Confederate side, 1,512 soldiers died, 7,816 were wounded, and 1,844 were captured and went missing. On the Union side, 2,108 soldiers were killed, 9,549 were wounded, and 753 went missing or were captured. This battle resulted in 9 times the number of American deaths than D-Day in World War II. Although the Union side suffered more casualties and more were wounded, the general of the Confederate Army, Robert E. Lee, retreated after a standoff, when neither side was attacking the other. This meant that the Union had won the battle. As I said before, the Battle of Antietam occurred near a town named Sharpsburg. Washington, D.C. was only 40 miles southeast of this area. This meant that the only thing that stood in between the Confederate Army and the invasion of the Union capital was General George McClellan's Army of the Potomac. The Union Army had a total of 80,000 soldiers, while the Southern Army only had 40,000 soldiers. For unknown reasons, McClellan only sent in 50,000 of his men, which downplayed his advantage in numbers. Later on, this decision made Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States at the time, strip him of his command. McClellan first started his military career at West Point, the best officers' academy in the United States, in the year of 1842. He then graduated in 1846 as a brevet second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Very soon after, he had his first war mission in the Mexican-American War. He served as an engineering officer during the war, and many times he fell under enemy fire. This showed the U.S. Army how brave and courageous he was, and it greatly affected his military and political life. Skipping 15 years later, George McClellan became the General-in-Chief of all the Union armies. Unfortunately for him, Abraham Lincoln and other political and military officials would become angered with McClellan for his slow attacks on the Confederate forces. This fault seemed to be what ended his military career for good.
When this sad war is over, we will all return to our home and feel that we can ask no higher honor than the proud consciousness that we belong to the Army of the Potomac.
Robert E. Lee led a very distinguished military career. He was crucial to several American victories in the American-Mexican War, and these led him to be promoted to brevet major. After the successful conclusion of the American-Mexican War, he was appointed to the position of superintendent at West Point, a job he did not want but accepted anyway. When the Civil War began, Lee was offered the position of commander of the Union Army by President Lincoln, but he declined and went to join the Confederates. After a short stint as an advisor to the Confederate Secretary of War, he assumed command of the Confederate Army of West Virginia. Immediately after taking command of the army, he fought the fateful Battle of Antietam. Afterwards, he was promoted to General-in-Chief of all the Confederacy armies. He fought in a few more battles, and then the war was over and the Union had won.
If Virginia stands by the old Union, so will I. But if she secedes, then I will follow my native state with my sword, and if need be, with my life.
As said by Robert.
Of all the places the Battle of Antietam was fought, the most important was the cornfield. After Union soldiers opened fire on the Confederate encampment with cannons, they followed the barrage of artillery with a 12,000-man charge through the cornfield. The Confederates were ready for them. Led by General Jackson, they stopped the charge by firing directly into the cornfield. The amount of Union soldiers that were killed in 90 minutes has been estimated to be about 3,000. After the Union retreated, the Confederates took control of the cornfield. The next attack by the Union was led by Major General Mansfield. He led his troops in an attempt to regain control of the cornfield from the south. Mansfield and his men accomplished nothing, and they too retreated. The final attack by the Union was led by General Sumner. He attacked by 18,000 men in another attempt to regain the cornfield. As with the previous attacks, he failed as well. This time, however, Confederate General Jackson moved from defense to attack. This did not turn out to be a good idea for the Confederacy. Enraged at his defeats, McClellan ordered the cornfield to be hit with artillery. Jackson's forces were decimated, and he was forced to make a retreat. This ended the conflict over the cornfield.
There were many different places where the Union and Confederate soldiers fought during the Battle of Antietam. One specifically gory place was Bloody Lane, otherwise known as Sunken Road. It got this name because supposedly after the battle, the road was stained with the blood of at least 5,000 soldiers, and there was literally a river of blood flowing down it. It all started when a Confederate general by the name of D.H. Hill positioned his soldiers, 2,600 of them in total, along the road to ambush the Union General William French and his division of 5,000 Union soldiers. Once the Union soldiers were within 100 yards of the Confederates, they opened fire and ripped the Union front line. In the hours to come, the two armies engaged in a close combat battle. Finally, the last few surviving Confederate soldiers fled. Hill and another Confederate general, James Longstreet, set up. We are bringing up the Battle of Burnside's Bridge again because of the importance of this battle. It was the third and final Battle of Antietam. This bridge crossed Antietam Creek, and on the other side, on a hill, Confederate General Robert Toombs and a division made up of regiments from Georgia. Here, he could overlook Antietam Creek and the small bridge that crossed it. It should have been easy for General Burnside of the Union to overpower Toombs with his large number of men. But instead, he decided to send his soldiers over the bridge in small groups. For a while, the Confederate held off the Union, until the Union bombarded the Confederate entrenchment. This allowed the Union to establish a foothold on the other side of the bridge. Like before, McClellan could have crushed the Confederate, but he delayed his attack. Finally, they attacked, and the hope of a victory for the Confederate diminished. Unfortunately for the Union, a Confederate general by the name of A.P. Hill and his light division attacked the Union from the south. This drastically changed the tide of the battle. On September 18th, both armies sat waiting for the other one. In this strategic overview, the generals and the number of men they command are shown. The time the attack commences is also shown at the upper left. First to attack is Corps 1, led by General Hooker. They charge through the cornfield in the early morning. Next comes 12th Corps. They move to reinforce the 1st Corps. To combat these Union attacks, the Confederate 1st Wing, led by General Jackson, moves in to defend the cornfield. They are successful. Parts of 2nd Corps, led by General Greene and Sedgwick, also moved to help the rest of the Union. But General French also moves to the front line. Next, General Richardson, the 9th Corps, and General Rodman also moves in. In response to all these Union threats, the Confederate 2nd Wing moves to combat them. Finally, 9th Corps changes its position and moves across the front line, the only Union division to do so. After a few more skirmishes, the battle is over. Although the Union had technically won, both sides decided on an improvised truce. President Abraham Lincoln was quite disappointed with the outcome and very angry with McClellan because he could have easily crushed the Confederate rebellion, but instead he acted too slowly and cautiously to score a large victory. The only reason why the Union won was because the Confederates retreated first, and by the Civil War standards, whoever retreated first lost. This win by the Union changed the tide of the war drastically because they destroyed Lee's whole strategy. This one also allowed Lincoln to announce the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1st, 1863. Another reason why the victory was a major accomplishment for the Union was because now France and Britain had been totally dissuaded from aiding the Confederates, which was very good for the North. In conclusion, although the Union had lost many, they had died for a good cause, because now the Union was much closer to winning the war than they had been before the battle.